Four figures spread in a shallow crescent across the width of a passage, close enough to support each other, wide enough to funnel anyone who advanced into the center of their arc. The position invited you forward. When you advanced, it closed behind you. When it closed, you belonged to them. He had stood in this position at Chalco. He had stood in it at the edge of the causeways when the rains came. He had been on both sides, the one who advanced and the one who waited. He knew what this was, a flower war negotiation. Advance to take prisoners. The corridor is the field, the guards are the line, and the offer is the same as it has always been. Step forward, be taken, serve. The passage stretched ahead, 30 paces, maybe more. It was straight and wide enough for 4 men abreast, lit from above by flat panels that cast no shadow. The Combine had designed it the way they designed everything, for control. No alcoves, no pillars, no terrain, just a clean line of sight from one end to the other, and the certainty that anything moving through it was visible, countable, and contained. Behind Tigo, the group filled the junction where the corridor met a wider bay. 63 now, or close to it, the original 30-odd from the first holding bay, swelled by captives, freed from cells along the approach, humans of different builds and different centuries, and the scaled non-humans from behind the wall, their iridescent bodies catching the sodium light in flickers of green and copper. The injured moved in the center, supported by whoever was closest. The corridor ahead was the last passage. Beyond those 4 guards, the bridge, the tall one who thought in architecture, the one Tigo had begun to think of as the strategist, was reading the formation the same way Tigo was. Tigo could tell from the angle of his head, the way his eyes moved from guard to guard, and then to the ceiling, then back. He was mapping intentions, not bodies. His conclusion would be political. They are offering terms, and the terms will close behind us. The broad Roman was reading it differently. His eyes went to the guards' spacing, their weapons, the width of the corridor. His conclusion would be military. 4 in a choke point, defensible, requires coordination to take. The young one, the modern one, was looking past the guards entirely. She was looking at the door behind them, at the faint glow of a status panel next to the frame. Her conclusion was structural. The bridge systems are on the other side of that door, and I need to reach them. All 3 were correct. None of them saw the part that mattered. Tigo saw it. They will not kill me. I am worth something to them alive. That is the same as armor, if you are willing to rely on it. He had done this calculation before, in the Flower War. He walked toward a line of warriors whose purpose was to capture, not kill. The weapons were real. The cuts were real. The blood was real. But the intent was containment. And if you understood the difference, if you could hold the shape of that difference in your mind while your body moved through violence, you could find the gap between what they were authorized to do and what you were willing to endure. These guards had the same constraint. He'd watched the Combine's responses through every corridor, every cell break, every confrontation. The weapons fired low-impact pulses. The containment devices restrained rather than killed. When a captive became difficult, the response was escalating restraint. Lethal force required authorization. Authorization came from the one in command, the pale, spindly figure they had not yet reached. Behind that door, an authorization took time. The gap between their first shot and their authorization to kill is the only terrain I need. He felt the Roman's hand close on his forearm. The grip was firm and absolute. Wait, we assess. That was the hand's meaning. Tigo had learned to read the Roman's body the way he read ceremony, the economy of it, the precision. Every gesture meant one thing and one thing only. Tigo looked at the hand on his arm. He studied it for a moment. The knuckles were scarred in a pattern that spoke of decades of grip on wood and iron. A soldier's hand, calloused in the places that come from holding a shield, a hand that had held lines and formations and other men's courage in place. Then he looked at the corridor, then at the Roman, The expression Tigo offered was the face of a man who had decided, perhaps the moment he saw the four guards standing the way men stand before an expected capture. There was nothing left to assess. The assessment was complete. He had done the arithmetic of his own value to the machine that held them, and the arithmetic was simple, and he was willing to bet his body on it. He lifted the Roman's hand off his arm, gently, the way you move a branch that has fallen across a path, without resentment, without force, with the understanding that it was simply in the way. The Roman's jaw tightened. He did not reach again. Tiga turned to the big Norseman, the one whose body filled corridors, whose hands had broken the first cell door open, the one who understood, Tiga suspected, what it meant to walk towards something on purpose. Nia, nikna mikuya mekting, mchu, I'm going, I'll meet you there. The Norseman did not understand the words. Tigo watched his face and saw the moment when the tone landed, the way a good warrior reads intent through sound and stance, the way any human who has stood before battle reads the voice of a man who has chosen. The Norseman's shoulders dropped a fraction. Acknowledgement. He shifted his weight, opened the line to the corridor, and did not try to stop him. Tigo stepped into the passage. The light was different here, brighter, flatter, designed to eliminate hiding. The floor was smooth composite that absorbed the sound of his bare feet. The walls were featureless gray, occasionally broken by recessed panels that glowed the same amber as everything else on this ship. He could feel the air recyclers in the ceiling, the faint push of atmosphere against his skin. 30 paces, he walked at the pace of a procession. The stride of a man crossing a sacred space, because every space where you risk your body becomes sacred, whether the walls know it or not. This is the same as the flower war, different flowers. At 20 paces, the guards reacted. Their weapons came up, stubby, dark instruments that Tigo had learned to recognize by their effect rather than their shape. The one on the far left shifted his weight forward, which meant he would move first. The one on the right was the steadiest, the one whose posture said, I have authority to decide. The two in the center were following protocol, which meant they were the least dangerous. They would do what their sequence told them, and the sequence was not built for this. Warning sounds filled the corridor, a flat, atonal pulse that repeated at 1-second intervals, accompanied by a voice from the ceiling, the same detached combine language that the woman with the vocabulary had been learning. Status indicators on the wall panels shifted from amber to a deeper orange. The whole corridor was telling him to stop, in a language built for compliant cargo. Tigo did not stop. At 15 paces, the left guard fired. The pulse hit him center mass. He had been hit before, in the first corridor, in the cell break, twice in the approach through the lower decks. The sensation was a deep, full-body clench, every muscle contracting at once, as if the air had become a fist. His vision whited at the edges, his teeth slammed together. It hurt. It was designed to do no more than that. He kept walking. The second shot came from the center right. This one hit his shoulder and he felt the muscle seize from collarbone to elbow, felt his arm swing uselessly for 2 strides before the nerves released and function came back. He made no sound. The flower war taught you that the sound of pain was a weapon your opponent used against you. You kept it inside and let it fuel the next step. 10 paces, the guards were cycling through their protocols now. Tigo could see it in their body language, the jerky, sequential movements of beings running through a decision tree that had no branch for what if the cargo keeps walking. The one on the right, the decisive one, was speaking into a device on his wrist, requesting authorization. The authorization would come from the bridge, from the one in command, and it would take time because bureaucracies are the same everywhere. The form must be filled before the throat can be cut. That is the gap. That is all the terrain I need. He reached the left guard at 7 paces. The guard lunged with a restraint tool, a curved instrument that was supposed to lock around the limb and deliver escalating pulses until compliance was achieved. The design assumed the target would be slower, or more afraid, or would flinch at the first contact. Tigo did not flinch. He stepped inside the arc of the lunge, caught the guard's extended arm at the elbow, and redirected it downward with a sharp, controlled twist. The restraint tool discharged into the floor. The guard's body followed the torque, and Tigo helped it along, his knee finding the thing's midsection with the precision of a warrior who had been learning anatomy through impact since age 12. The guard folded. Tigo took the restraint tool and used it on the second guard before the second guard finished raising his weapon. The tool locked around the guard's forearm. The pulse fired. The guard staggered sideways and crashed into the wall panel, which cracked and went dark. The third guard had his weapon up and was trying to establish distance. Tigo closed the distance. There was no technique for what he did next. Or rather, the technique was so old and so practiced, it no longer had a name. A guard's weapon discharged into Tigo's chest from a hand's width away, and Tigo hit him with the discharge, absorbing the full body clinch while his momentum carried his shoulder into the guard's center mass and drove the guard backward into the sealed door. 3 down. 12 seconds, perhaps 15. The containment pulses sang through his muscles, residual contractions flickering across his ribs and abdomen like heat lightning. The fourth guard, the decisive one, the one with authority, stood 2 paces to the right of the door. His weapon was raised and steady. Vivocanor's device had gone silent. No response from the bridge. No authorization, no backup. Tigo looked at him. The guard looked at Tigo, the código, as the burns already forming on his chest and shoulder, at the calm behind his eyes, at the 3 bodies on the floor. The guard was performing a calculation of his own now, one that had nothing to do with protocol stacks and everything to do with the arithmetic every being with a survival instinct performs when confronted with something the manual didn't cover. Tigo waited. He let the moment breathe. The guard lowered his weapon, stepped to the side, pressed his back against the wall, and did not move again. Tigo held the position. He stood at the near end of the cleared corridor, facing back the way he had come, while 63 people moved through the passage behind him. He heard their footsteps, bare feet and composite, the heavier tread of the Norseman, the careful clicking of the non-human segmented legs on the smooth floor. He heard the injured being helped along, the sounds of effort and pain. He heard the modern one say something to someone in a low, urgent voice and then say it again, and he heard the shakiness under her words that told him she was recalculating something she had believed about the world. He knew they wouldn't shoot him, she said. He knew. How did he know that? Tigo did not turn. He watched the corridor. 2 guards had repositioned. The first one he dropped and the decisive one, both now 40 paces back, standing in the wider bay where the group had gathered before. They had fallen to secondary protocol, wait for backup. Tigo watched the decisive one. He let the guard see that he was being watched. The guard did not advance. The people moved through, the young, the old, the scaled aliens who smelled like dry copper and moved with careful, articulated precision. A Mikio Eno and a broken arm cradled against his chest, a woman carrying a child whose eyes were closed. The non-humans moved in a loose cluster, their kaleidoscope eyes tracking everything, their triple-jointed legs carrying them with a strange, folding grace. The last one through was one of the non-humans, smaller than the others, moving carefully, favoring one leg. It paused near Tigo and turned one of its segmented eyes toward him. The eye shifted through a series of focal patterns, like a lens adjusting. Tigo met its gaze. The alien made a sound, a low harmonic that vibrated in the floor, and moved on. Tigo released the position. He did not check if anyone was grateful. He did not look for acknowledgement. He walked to the bridge door and stopped in front of it. The surface was dark composite, inset with a status panel that pulsed soft amber. Everyone else had moved past him, crowding the wider space before the door, but Tigo stood close enough to touch it. A Buddha's head, Hima panolti no nenzin, ma hikma ma kilti in campa non yaus, amo nima mauhutia, 3 words worth of meaning, spoken quietly to someone who was not there. Someone who had been dead before the light took him, or dead long before that, or alive only in the space Tigo kept behind his ribs, where the sacred and the tactical had never been separate things. He did not translate, he did not explain. He looked up at the door. Behind him, the woman with the vocabulary, the one who learned languages the way rivers learn landscapes, was kneeling beside the status display panel. Her lips moved as she matched glyphs to her growing lexicon. Her expression shifted. Something in the display was wrong, or unexpected, or both. She looked at the strategist. The strategist looked at the modern one. The modern one came forward. She crouched beside the display, her eyes scanning the readouts with the focus of someone who understood systems even when the language was alien. Her brow furrowed. Then it smoothed. Then it furrowed again, deeper. His backup, she said. Her voice was very quiet. It was redirected 42 minutes ago. A pause. The corridor hummed. He's been negotiating empty-handed for 40 minutes. She looked at the door. He doesn't know.